Oh, nice. That was my initial reaction when I saw how the chief business officer of Dfinity, whose name is Pierre, he recently allegedly said how onboarding a new custody provider from the banking sector, and this is actually a post by the Internet Computer today. So I thought it was really cool. I mean, I didn't expect this, right? I mean, people like this tell me, oh, Dfinity, it's done for, it's toasted, it's deep fried and all this. They say it's cooked, basically. But when I take a look at this right here, this could be pretty amazing in my opinion, just because if they're onboarding a new custody provider from the banking sector, and if let's say it is a really big or famous partner, that could be a big thumbs up for me. But I'll talk about that in today's video, even though nothing I say is financial advice, and even though I am not telling anyone to do anything. But we sometimes have to consider that when it comes to Dfinity, they're not playing around. Take this into consideration. Pierre, who again is the chief business officer of Dfinity, he's just fresh off leaving Paris, France, because he was in France not too long ago, together with the United Nations Development Program team, basically, in regard to the newly formed blockchain advisory group. So we got to take that into consideration. This is the stuff that Pierre is doing. So when people like to say, oh, Dfinity, they're kind of left behind, no one really cares about it. Well, maybe in the retail side of things, a lot of people have left when it comes to the Internet Computer, which is totally understandable. The market isn't doing the best. But behind the scenes, Dfinity still doing their thing, and seeing something like this, it does surprise me, I think, because it showcases that they're caring about security in a sense, right? Because again, they're onboarding a new custody provider from the banking sector, allegedly, which kind of does indicate to me that security is a top priority in this sense, because they're not, why would they care about this? Not to mention as well, if we take a look at the concept of the Internet Computer, it's not like it's outdated or something like that. There is the narrative of decentralized AI, and this right here I think is a big deal because a lot of people do care about AI. It's still kind of lagging behind though when it comes to this space, because in the case of stocks, for instance, it's already a really big narrative. Not so massive here, but at the same time, if it does become a big narrative, the Internet Computer is waiting right there. And the thing is, they're not just focused on regular quote-unquote AI. They're focused on decentralized AI. This is taking things to a whole nother level. That's the thing. People sometimes don't consider this. Now, people like to say, well, why doesn't every project out there just focus on decentralized AI? Well, in theory, they could if they had the capacity, but sometimes they don't. That's just the thing. It's like comparing a 200 horsepower vehicle with one that's like 600 horsepower. It's just a little bit different. The thing about the Internet Computer is this. A lot of other projects out there, they like to say they're focused on AI, but I question and I sometimes often wonder how they can really even be focused on AI in the first place, because the fundamentals aren't really there to begin with. It's like, for instance, if let's say someone upgrades their car, right? They try to focus a lot on the horsepower and just making the engine really powerful. If they don't also work on the forged internals, like for instance, having a stronger and more powerful transmission that can actually handle that, or maybe have upgrades when it comes to the clutch or the suspension or whatever. The thing is, if they don't also improve the forged internals as well, that very powerful engine right there, sure, it can just be really powerful, but the forged internals later, they're just going to break if they can't, handle that additional power. So sometimes a lot of projects out there, they're focused a lot on the engine, but they're not focused on the other parts, if that makes sense. The engine being, in this case, in terms of an analogy, AI, but the forged internals are the actual, I guess, infrastructure. The Internet Computer, they focus on the forged internals first, or should I say Dfinity, so that way they can really improve on the engine, right? Like in a sense where they have Caffeine AI, they have OIC version 2, they're now really focused on the cloud market through something called cloud engines. Again, they focused on the forged internals first before they really focus on the engine. So that's a really smart move in my opinion. Other projects out there, they think about it in the opposite way. They try to improve on the engine, but they don't really focus on the forged internals. That's not so good, oftentimes. So this is what I like about the Internet Computer. Now, again, it's still below $3. It's easy to take a look at this and say, wow, it's really bad. And I agree, from the price charts, it just isn't looking the best. But at the same time, the fundamentals are there, and yet the price is low. So am I going to complain if something got better, yet it became cheaper? I don't think I would. It's like, imagine if, let's say, in real life, in a random hypothetical make-believe scenario, usually we buy a phone, a laptop, or whatever. If the specs are better, like the specifications, usually it doesn't become cheaper, right? But when it comes to this space, sometimes it can operate in that way, in a sense where during a bear market or when the market just isn't doing the best at all, sometimes we see these amazing projects that keep improving, yet the price charts are just going lower and lower. But at the same time, I'm not going to complain about that because I like me some low prices. That's the thing. I like discounts. Doesn't mean I want to see one forever, but if I see it for the time being, I have zero complaints. That's the thing. With the internet computer being at around $2.25, so it hasn't done much ever since my last video, but people like to say that sometimes their average cost is like $9 or $10 or whatever, and in which case we saw like around $9 back in November of last year. So they keep telling me that, okay, now sure, we may be over 3 times lower than $9, but they say if ICP, or should I say their own computer, if it goes back to $9, they say that that's just like breaking even. Who cares about that? Now, that would be the case if, let's say, my average was at around $9 and I simply stopped dollar cost averaging. Then, of course, yeah, if it goes back to around $9, then it's just going to be breaking even. But because now that the internet computer is around $2.25, and since I'm still dollar cost averaging once a month, assuming that, let's say, my average cost was $9, by me constantly dollar cost averaging at below $3, it's eventually going to kind of bring that average cost down. In which case, if it does that, let's say the average cost goes down to like $3.50 or whatever, and now that if it, let's say, maybe goes back to $9, it's no longer breaking even, right? Because $3.50 is over 2 times lower than $9. If that kind of hypothetically makes sense. But I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but that's just something that I have in my mind, right? Because every time I say, oh, the internet computer, it's over 3 times lower than $9. We saw $9 near the end of last year. I oftentimes like to say that, but people like to say, but yeah, the average is $9 though. It's not going to mean much if it just goes back to there. It's breaking even. And again, I understand that, but that's why low prices, it's a time for me to lower down my average cost. So then it no longer becomes $9, right? Maybe it becomes like $4, $3.50, and so on. But yeah, besides that point, this is just my personal perspective as of right now, and when it comes to Dfinity, I like what they're doing. However, what will exactly be their new custody provider from the banking sector? I mean, we don't know as of right now. Nothing has been said yet, but when someone like Pierre says that, it does get me a little bit excited because it makes me a little bit curious. But of course, as they reveal it, I'll make sure to make a video on it, so hopefully y'all stay tuned for that. I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I hope y'all have a very nice day.